Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to an opportunity to unlock knowledge. This is Boston Broadcast. My name is Sureshnie and you are in hashtag Study Sesh. We're basically giving you these nuggets to unlock modules that you understand even more. And I'm so excited to have this week's lecturer on board with us. Her name is Leandre van Heerden, and she is a lecturer in adaptive leadership. Hey, what's up, Leandre? How you doing?
Hi, Sureshnie. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here. Well, how are you?
Good, thank you. I am so excited about this topic because I think it is something that is absolutely vital considering the global pot that each of us are sitting in. Our world is no longer just about our armchair in South Africa. Most of us, due to COVID and remote learning, are finding ourselves working in the middle of call centers, working in the middle of organizations that are split globally. So at any given point, you're meeting people who are living in the US, people who live in China and India, people who live in Australia and even New Zealand. I mean, just like how you and I are connecting, I'm currently in the US of A and you are in South Africa. I love the cultural melting pot that is this brand new world. And that is the topic that we're going to unpack today. Let's open up the context of what is cultural intelligence and what is cultural synergy.
Sure, yeah. So, do you know what? Firstly, the second I heard cultural intelligence, I immediately thought of, IQ, EQ. I don't know if you've ever heard of
Yeah.
AQ, which refers to adaptability quota. And I realized, that this is an even more evolved side of intelligence, is being culturally intelligent. And firstly, it refers to being aware of your own culture. It refers to knowing who you are and what your background is, what your history is, what your culture is. But then aside from knowing who you are, it's also very important to be aware, acknowledge, and respect the culture of others and be able to bring those two together. It's respecting the culturally diverse setting that you're in. I think especially in South Africa, where there's a very high level of diversity here. So cultural intelligence would mean that here we are actually aware of our own culture, but the cultures of others. But then that brings me to cultural synergy, is the fact that we once again take our individual contributions, our uniqueness of the different cultures, and bringing that together and actually deliver a positive outcome. For example, the word in South Africa is Ubuntu.
Yeah.
That is it. That to me is cultural synergy.
Leandre, I love that definition of cultural intelligence and cultural synergy. And I think it's very important to start off when you are in a leadership role to have this already. And not everybody has cultural EQ. I think it's something that they might be getting used to. Why is it important, you think, to understand this concept, especially from a leadership perspective?
So, I mean, if leaders have cultural intelligence, they're actually able to manage cultural teams better. Because I can tell you now, you can walk into an organization and you will absolutely, I can almost say, I can guarantee you, you would find different cultures there, various histories and backgrounds.
Yeah.
And if a leader is not able to work with that and bring something positive out of that, I don't think the organization is going to go very well. And it's basically the thing of cultural synergy is, like I said earlier, it's about bringing our uniqueness together. And if you and I, for example, take our uniqueness, take our different cultures and bring it together, we can actually achieve high levels of innovation. We can achieve high levels of creativity. And a leader is there to actually help the teams navigate towards that, because you and I would, for example, have our differences because of our cultures.
Yeah.
But if a leader is capable of leading different cultures, if he has a high CQ, as we mentioned earlier, then he's actually able to bring a success out of different cultures. And that is why it's so important not only to have, multicultural leadership, but to have high levels of awareness of the different cultures in organizations, and there's no way to avoid that. There is no way to, to work around that. You have to take these differences and make it work, because otherwise, we might end up having to change ourselves
Yeah.
to make that company work. And as we know today, there is just no way that is ever going to be sustainable. So I actually believe multicultural leadership enables sustainable business practices, because now the more I function in my own culture, the more you function in your own culture, the better we'll do, because that is who we are. So leaders are very important in this context, because they will help us get there with, with the right methods and ways to resolve conflict.
Yeah, and I think also in the greater picture of things, when you lead with by that a kind of example, and if your leader completely grasps the concept of that, and then you lead with heart, I think you have more input and more investment from your team, because they're like, oh, this man speaks my language. She understands what I'm going through. She gets it. She appreciates where I come from, and she's taking a moment to understand my culture. And I think that can only be a positive influence.
And if I may, apart from the cultural side of it, it's actually a very deep human part of us that has the desire to be included.
Yeah.
It's about inclusivity. So our humanity is linked to our culture. If I can say it, be that bold and say that. So if we are included based on our culture, we'll also be more human. And I think that is actually where talent comes from, and that is where our ability lies. So if leaders enable high levels of, or if they enable various cultures to work together, I think we'll be amazed at what we can see in organizational settings.
Yeah, it's like if you take yourself back to the school ground, and if all of us were involved in playing a sport like netball and everybody got a chance to be in the actual court itself, we all get excited. But if somebody consistently gets left out or never gets picked on the team, they've got no interest to making this team successful. They're like, I'm here just because I have to be here. But if you put that then into a work environment and everyone is included and everyone feels seen, and I think that's an important buzzword that we use right now. I want to be seen. I want to know that I'm valued, and people want to be validated. And I think the moment you do that, that is when you achieve that cultural synergy, because we're all in this together. We are a team. I see you, you see me. I want to see you, and I want to see you when you speak. I love that. So I get this. I love how important it is to understand the concept, and I hope we see more leaders doing that. Leandre, how about you unpack for me what are the key features of a multicultural organization?
Yeah. So, firstly, I just want to put it out there that it's extremely important to understand what is multicultural leadership, because I do believe it's a term that is thrown around and about, in society. But if leaders do not actually understand what it entails, there is no use. It's something. Multicultural leadership is something that must be actioned. A lack of understanding actually inhibits leaders, this is my opinion, in being able to cultivate a thriving multicultural work environment. So this brings me now to your question in terms of the key features which in the background is enabled by multicultural leaders. Firstly is diversity. Okay, we see it all over, especially in South Africa, and I do believe it's also a global thing where it's really, people strongly encourage high levels of diversity. And let me be honest with you, when I was younger, I used to think it's only, a racial thing, and because people might have historical issues because of race and gender. But I understand now that it is so much deeper than that. A diverse workforce adds so much value. It's much more than just being, historically disadvantaged. There's so much more than that. I would encourage diversity, not because I'm scared people would think that I don't care about other genders or other races, but I would encourage diversity because it adds tremendous value to your team. So that's a key feature, is diversity. And diversity itself can obviously be, broken into multiple different parts based on background, based on race, based on gender, based on beliefs, whatever it is, there's diversity is it's on the top of my list even as a key feature. Then you would also
Yeah.
have that inclusive culture. And I think this is extremely important to have this type of culture in a multicultural organization, especially if it's diverse. Because
Yeah.
I don't think inclusivity is including somebody that you agree with. That is just,
Yes.
it's almost, it just happens. I don't even have to really accept you because you're like me. So there's no acceptance that takes place really. But inclusion is bringing somebody in, dragging somebody into your circle, even though, or actually, especially because they're different. That's
Yeah.
inclusion. So having that kind of culture in an organization will, I think will add so much to just a general sense of happiness in the work environment. The employee wellness, as you also know, is a massive thing in today's organizational, how can I say, discussions, is employee wellness.
Leandre, one of the key characteristics I think that you were trying to unpack within multicultural organizations is this ability to adapt. I mean, we often hear the saying, adapt or die. What does being adaptive mean?
So that's a great question, and like I said, it's one of my favorite topics right now. I'm obsessed with it, really, and we live in a time where it's extremely, extremely important to be adaptive. So if I can think about the idea that I would have in my mind is to be like clay, for example, but don't allow yourself to harden to circumstances. Instead, be shaped with the circumstances. Sometimes we might have to be broken down like a hardened pot, a clay pot. But that clay pot, even the broken clay pot, can be, you know, I don't even know all of the the clay terms, but it can actually be softened again. If you apply heat and water to it, it
Yeah.
can be softened again. It can be remolded. And there's the word. Allow yourself to be remolded. That is what adaptive means to me. Is allowing situations or circumstances to reshape me. So in relation to cultural synergy, cultural intelligence, it's it's that way of coming with your view and I'm coming with my view, but we're not stuck in our ways. We allow our minds and our thinking, our perspectives to be remolded. And that is
Yeah.
adaptability to me. And that's once again awareness, inclusion. The more adaptable you are, the more you're able to include others. The more adaptable you are, the more you'll give others equal opportunity. The more adaptive you are, the better you'll communicate cross-culturally. And not only in your own language or your own, mannerisms or your own way of thinking, but you're actually able now to communicate with different people and in their way of thinking, in their way of speaking. And that
Yeah.
is actually something that I think is extremely important in a business. You as a leader cannot go in there thinking that your way is the only way. Your culture is the culture that's going to be set in this place. I believe in the end, the culture of an organization comes from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And it's the leader must be there to help, to lead, of course, but it's all a working mechanism. There is no set way in a culture. It's all about it's working together. It constantly moves, and that is why adaptability is so important.
All right, so we have a broader understanding of multiculturalism and the positive impact. But what does it look like from a practical level if an organization doesn't have this ability to practice multiculturalism? Like, what could be the consequences thereof?
So I want to give you a quick example of a video that I watched the other day, but I'm going to express it in to fit this picture, this question. Once again, we're in society where each person has their own color, and I'm not talking about skin color. I'm talking about cultural color, their own way of thinking, their own flavor. I think that's a better word, flavor. If you step into an organization and you're not allowed to live out that essence, to live through the flavor that you add to the company, that can actually cause major division and it can actually lead to marginalization. And I hate that. Can I tell you, there is one thing that I stand very strongly on is not is against conformity. And I do not think that it is fair if leaders make people come into their organization and end up having to conform to
Yes.
whatever is built in there. Yes, because you have no idea what that person can really do for your company if you marginalize them. So, and that in the end leads to lack of innovation. It leads people away from wanting to make a change and make a difference. So I think it's important to be culturally sensitive and create programs if people don't know what to do. It's, to me, it's extremely important to be aware of this. First and foremost, be aware of it, because poor cultural leadership practices will lead to constant misunderstanding, lack of, poor communication, and in the end, there will be division in the organization, which
Yeah.
which is obviously going to impact the future and the success of your business.
That ethos of the company is so important, and people throwing around
Absolutely.
slangs or people throwing around phrases like ship in or ship out, my way or the highway. You
Yes.
can't work like that, and nobody wants to be in an environment.
Mm.
And the moment you recognize this is not working, people like, you know what, I unsubscribe, this is not the energy that I want to be around, I leave. And then you lose
Mm.
valuable people. And all you needed to do in the first place was understand what upset them and why you are in the position in the first place. I love real life examples because I think when we understand real life examples, we can resonate, we can relate, we can go, oh, I see it. That example is true to us. Could you give us like an actual real life example of poor cultural leadership? And then also to positively end it like, okay, what strategies could we have put in place to avoid situation like this? So basically, what is good practice in a bad example?
So I also love real life examples. I think it's always the best way to learn because that gives us a clear picture of what went wrong and it gives us a clear understanding of what can go wrong. And this can actually help companies be more proactive and preempt the type of errors that you can make. And the example that I'm going to give is actually something that I do not think the team intentionally did. They did not do this to harm a specific culture or race in this specific incidents, but I do believe that they were not aware of what they were doing necessarily. And you might know this, you might be familiar with this. It happened in 2018 with H&M, where they had the ad of the black child wearing a shirt actually saying the coolest monkey in the jungle. So this is now obviously a marketing issue, but of course there was leadership that took place in that situation. And apart from the fact that H&M did try to rectify the situation, it still harmed their reputation in the first
Yeah.
place, but it harmed people, the people who actually, in a sense, or related to the child based on race, actually ended up being harmed by the situation. And it changed their view of the organization, and I think it also impacted the trust that customers have in the brand. And in terms of a strategy to rectify this is really first and foremost, like I said right in the beginning, is awareness. I don't think the employees did this intentionally, the marketing team, but I do not think that they were as aware as they could have been. So that's, and like I mentioned previously as well, with the programs that they can give employees just to increase cultural sensitivity. That is
Yeah.
important because they might have meant it as fun, and they might not have implied what people saw when they looked at it, but there's still consequences. And what's important to you or what's important to me might not be as important to the other one, but that doesn't mean it's not important. So that is extremely important or essential in teams to know that while one culture might not be affected by this, another might, and the consequences could be severe. I think, as much as they took apology and action, like I said earlier, they responded quite quickly. They removed the ad, but I think after that this is something that not just any company can bounce back from.
Yeah.
And once this is something, instead of trying to fix it, they just have to learn from this, and especially other companies too. And it shows you the multiple areas that go into marketing, that go into leadership, that go into the business world, because you cannot ignore something. I believe everything is interlinked with one another. So when you make a decision here, it's going to impact something somewhere else. So
Yeah.
the higher, high levels of awareness and extreme sensitivity. And I'm sure, as you know, in today's society, the level of sensitivity must be tweaked even higher, because people are
Yeah.
even more sensitive than ever. So
Yeah.
if a company does not recognize this, it could be to their detriment.
Yeah, it's also, like I said, I think I keep bringing it up with the being tone deaf. And please also understand, a lot of companies are global brands, and I think that global brands have a larger responsibility because they're dealing with people all over the world. And I think it's important for them to know every little thing of, like, could this be offensive? Let's look at our current situation with the war. If we put something up, could it be related? Could somebody immediately be triggered by that's reminding us of what's
Yes.
currently happening in this part of the world, or this is something that's inconsistent with what your brand has promised, or what your value proposition is in the first place. And I think that's really important. And I love that we
Yeah.
have to be accountable, and there are teachable moments. And if a company is able to go back and look back at the drawing board and, like, you know what, we made an error in this. This was our error in judgment, but we have learned something, and now we move forward, because I think that's what we love. We have to keep moving
Yeah.
positively.
I like that, because I just, to finish it on a positive note, instead of just focusing on the poor side of it, poor leadership the whole time. Just as you said, let it teach you,
Yeah.
and, let's embrace it as well. Once again, pulling all of this together and recognizing the value that it can add to a company. For all we know, this mistake that H&M made, or the marketing team made, could actually taught them such a valuable lesson that they will never ever show in any instance insensitivity to
Yeah.
customers or internal, cultural matters. So these mistakes are important, they are necessary, because that's how we learn from them. And that is actually how we're going to end up seeing the value of multiculturalism.
What a beautiful way to end our topic today. Thank you so much, Leandre. I have got even more context.
Thank you,
I think
Sureshnie.
we were all introduced to new terms like what is your emotional quotient? What is your emotional intelligence, or just your IQ? Now we've learned about
Yes.
CQ and AQ. Thank you so much for unpacking that with us. That was another successful session of hashtag Study Sesh, brought to you by Boston Broadcast. We're here to help you unlock knowledge.